Okay, so today on the Plant Cutting Podcast, I am very happy to introduce my friend and mentor, Anima Pundeer. So how are you today, Anima?
Good. I'm happy to be here, Isaac.
We're
Yeah, this
happy
is
too.
interesting. Yeah.
We interviewed Art about this time last year, and
Hmm.
it was really cool and different than a lot of other podcasts, more about like
Hmm.
herbalism or so on. But I think that a lot of people will be really interested in this, and I'm excited to share, you and your story and your, just an amazing person with my podcast community. So
Thank you. Thank you, Isaac. I'm not sure I'm that amazing though. I'm more of your friend than your mentor also. I don't see myself as really a
well,
mentor.
you're
Uh-huh.
like someone further along the spiritual path that is a good example.
Yeah.
So that's
Uh-huh.
that's always important to have in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Isaac, you just brought up art, obviously, because y'all are friends, but
Mhm.
we also co-authored this amazing book, Always Right Behind You, which is a
Uh-huh.
collection of really cool poems and stories and
Mhm.
beautiful insights. So, we've been reading this and
Mhm.
um, it's been really cool to kind of, for me, I haven't met you yet, even though you're Isaac's good friend, to kind of like get inside your head and understand a little bit. So it's a really great.
Yeah. This book we started writing 12 years ago. So you can imagine I was, and writing or words or talking is not my strong forte, as you say. I'm not very good at that. So yeah, so then it went on a back burner, and then a couple of years ago I'd said, my days are numbered. I had this dream that whatever, just so he said we need to wrap this project up. So, and then it was COVID time, I think. It wasn't because just and it I think everything has its time. You don't know when things happen, but yeah, so it got done pretty quickly, though it got started whenever. And yeah, and it kind of evolved. I didn't know what I was going to write about, and art has a different way of writing. I'm thinking, should I, what do you do? Should you copy him? And I've never taken any writing classes or anything like that. So and as I said, I'm not good at writing. So I just wrote whatever inspired me in my path, my own stories. I thought I'll write this for my younger self, someone who's might feel inspired. So this book was when I thought like that, then it started coming more easily. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I think your personality shines
Oh,
through
yeah.
in it, and there's a lot of different stories and different like styles, which is I think that's fun. I like that kind of book where you have, poems and essays and short stories and all sorts of stuff.
yeah, yeah.
So, our when we interviewed Art, our first question to him was, "What do you
A
know for
low,
sure?"
it's a low ball
Low ball
question.
question. So we want to ask you the same question. What do you know for sure?
I I know for sure who I am. I I know the source of who Isaac is. I know who Isaac is. I know who AC is. And even if you guys think you are separate from me, I don't see like that. And when I say namaste to you, uh, seriously, when it just one day, when I went back to India and I said namaste to someone, and I started crying because I truly understood the word. And I had, I'm Indian. From day one, we are taught, oh, say namaste to your uncle. Whatever. But after that day, I just suddenly got it.
Wow.
So I know when I say namaste. So I know that for sure.
The natural next question to that though is how do you know what you are?
How do I know what I am? That's a very difficult question, I think. Yeah, it's, I know what I am because it's not only it, even this human consciousness, the human entity, Anima, is, she knows it. Um, she experienced it. She got um, the awareness got blown into it. So, and I just became that. It wasn't, you know how you say, oh, have to go inside, you fall into the source. You see, you hear all these words, but they are not just words, Isaac. They are true. They are truth. I know those. I know that state of falling into the source. And it is actually falling. You can't walk into it. You can't decide to do anything. You just get like, so, and it wasn't just a mystical experience, that I could imagine, or I could think of. It wasn't just a creation of my imagination, because the mind was still operating at its level, and yet mind was just going crazy. Oh my God, what is this? the it, but it wasn't just that. It's true that you fall into the source, and I fell into it.
So from experience, I guess. You can't really say.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but see, the experience comes and goes, it ends, right?
Yes.
And yet, so then what does it then? That's the experience. You can't stay in that unmanifested state. The organism cannot operate from there.
Yeah.
You see, and so then that makes you. Then suddenly, what you've been seeking suddenly gets, oh, this. So then you start to. It took me almost 5, 6, 7 years to really um, to really grasp, or the for the you know just to, yeah, it took it wasn't just oh, I found it. It's just like, oh gosh, what like it was not easy. It's not something that, it's not pleasant in terms of body, or nice, or happy, or joy, whatever people say. Yeah, but all those things come much before that, Isaac. The joy, the, the I think whatever we associate with enlightenment or waking up comes much just by the sheer process of seeking, self-inquiry, all those things. Because they're still at the level, we exist at the level of duality, right? So when we are seeking through self-inquiry, when we're going through self-inquiry and asking questions, or any seeking, meditating constantly, and just looking for something outside of you, something other than you, then as the self decreases, I feel your interest in your own, this self, becomes less and less. And so the other aspects of life becomes much more livable. You find your emotion, thoughts becoming more, finding the equanimity within. um just the suffering, the the meaning of the words change. You start off with saying, oh, I want to end my suffering. That's what I thought, that I want to find a permanent end to my suffering. But then I had to really look at what, at some point, I got questioned about what really is suffering. What does it mean to you? And when you start to look at that, what really is suffering? Is it just outside world, tsunami came, or the emotions or feelings or relationships or the worldly related suffering, is it that, or is it more internal, or is it even more internal? It's like existential even. So yeah, the words, the love, the word love or happiness, that I'm seeking happiness. Really, what really is happiness? When you start to inquire, and it's as simple as that. It's not something complicated. Whatever you feel you are looking for, and when you really start to think about that word itself, suffering, happiness, or peace, capital P, peace, people talk about. What does that mean to you in your context? And when you do that, if anything, self-inquiry in whatever, we all understand the word in our own way. It brings clarity. Brings clarity to your own thinking. And it's just, I think process of self-inquiry is bringing clarity, just clearing out stuff that we believe about. It's a very organic process. I like that word.
Yeah. So when you say self-inquiry, what exactly do you mean? Like, is it a specific process, or in your years of self-inquiry, have you found ways to do it effectively or effectively in a group? Like, what are the ways you explore yourself?
Yeah. So, when the word self-inquiry at once brings, Ramana Maharishi. He's the one who, who's used that word. And the question, who am I? Right? That's the basic foundational question that comes. But it took me, most of my inquiry wasn't about who am I. It wasn't a problem with my identity. I was pretty good, happy with who I was, or whatever I knew of myself. But just unhappy. That was the only problem, that who I thought I was just so miserable. So my inquiry was basically, ultimately, it does come down to really not, who am I? That, but it didn't start off like that for me. Self-inquiry was more, why am I so miserable? Why am I so irritated? Why do I nag Sharad so much? Or why is Sharad so irritating? He's my husband. Um, it's, why am I suffering? Why, and even addiction, and what's addiction? What's, so yeah. So inquiry to me, all that is also was inquiry to me. It was small as self-inquiry though. And at some point in one of the, just one of those regular Monday meetings, someone asked me, what does self-inquiry mean to you? And suddenly it struck me that all this while, when I'm doing, all this serious work and coming to the meetings and doing inquiry, never once in my head have I inquired into really capital S self. That is so quite a shock to my ego and my pride. Here I am doing self-inquiry, talking about self-inquiry, just meeting Art and everybody else on, for all this. And yet I never really inquired into capital S self. I never thought about it, never, and it's all about attention, AC and Isaac. It's just so, and this group work, doing the group work with other seekers, they are so, they are the teachers. They were really my teachers, I can say, because you see yourself in them, you see yourself in their struggles, and they are the ones who ask you questions that you can't see in yourself. They can see things in you. And they ask you, and that was just so helpful, I think. Yeah, just the group work and my fellow seekers, I'm so indebted to them. And there were younger people, young kids like Isaac. Yeah.
So Arnima, what brought you to that point, were you always a seeker, or when did that become a conscious activity for you?
So yeah, growing up, I think I wasn't. mm, um, I grew up in a small little village back in India, and my dad was alcoholic, and so it was a very alcoholic environment. I was just unhappy as a child. I was anxious. I was worried. It wasn't a good place, and I blame my dad for it. I thought only if he can stop drinking, and it was a very, very severe alcohol problem. Like early in the morning, as soon as he get up, and I would be hiding his bottles as kids. My mom was just a very miserable alcohol driven environment. So, but at some point when I was 15 or 16, he developed some sort of his body just gave up. He got so sick that he had to give up alcohol. And he was an artist at his heart. And he was sort of a, weird, strange kind of seeker, in the sense he would fast on Mondays, do his meditation morning and evening, sometimes when he remembered on his sober days or not. But then he sobered up, and he became, at that time, I think Osho was becoming popular with certain Indian mindsets, but overall people didn't like Osho very much because of, he was just so whatever he said. So he became a Osho sannyasi, and it became more directed. His path became more directed. And when his path became more directed, we had a little Osho center in Dehradun. We lived in a small town, So we would go with him on Sundays or Saturdays, and we do, like, Osho has these really interesting meditation techniques. Dynamic meditation, Kundalini meditation, Nad Brahm is more just for all kinds of. I think he's kind of really driven by Gurdjieff. I think he was inspired by Gurdjieff. That's my suspicion, but he
That's
thinks
really it's interesting.
yeah. So his and my dad would go for retreats, like for force, and he would come and tell us, like, you'd wear mask for 3 days or 4 days. It's like all about looking at your identity from different angles. But I was like, I was 15, 16, mostly went there for food and good music. Gurdjieff or Osho's satsangs and his meditation techniques had really interesting music. I like music. So yeah. So that was, and before that also, on my own, I read Raj Yoga, and I would try to figure out, meditation. I did, you're Indian, you live in that environment. So at some point you learn to do pranayam at 10, 12. At some point you did it, it's just like part of village life, right? You see people, I'll talk about the yoga that I saw and the yoga now sometime later. But yeah, so there was some sort of foundational meditation thing, which I didn't associate as meditation, but looking back, that was it, just controlling your breath, doing breathing exercises, looking at your breathing going in, just part of yoga, part of meditation, whatever. So, but doing those Osho meditations, really, that was my first, formal or more active meditation. And then, yeah, so on and off I would do it. My younger sister, she was very disciplined, and my dad had this thing about getting up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and doing it, first thing. And I hated getting up in the So he and I always had a big fights about, why do I have to get up? Morning time is the best time of the day. You should use it. And so he and I always had to not want to do things that he asked me to do anyway. So that was, yeah. And he would ask me questions like, who is this aware? You say, who is this aware? So so at some point, I thought, who is this about? And then I realized, really, there is a movie going on where things happen and I'm in it, and I can watch myself. It's like I could watch myself. So it's like a switch. I think everybody has it, and one day you realize you really are doing that. It's not something that divine intervention or something magical happened. It's just that you see that you can observe it. It's the way mind is. Human beings can see that. All human beings can see that. It's just needs to get, you just have to take, somebody has to point it to you, bring to your attention, and when it's brought to your attention and you think about it, it's as simple as that. So yeah, so about, but at that point in time, I saw that
Yeah.
you
You can observe yourself. Yeah.
yes, yeah, you're aware of things. I won't even call it too much of, you see yourself doing things, you see yourself acting, reacting, your emotions, your thoughts, yeah. So
So what brought you to the US?
so yeah, so when I was, again, it's growing up in that little place, my future was, you turn 21, 22, get married, find a Rajput boy. And marriage was such a, thought of marriage was like, oh, suffocating. I couldn't imagine myself, getting married and being a wife and just living in one big household with making rotis and khana for the rest of us, taking care of. And I went to a small school where I was exposed to, I had, access to library. And my mother was a reader and she bought us books. And at that point in time, India and Russia were friends. So we'd get this Russian literature, Maxim Gorky, and, these colorful books, Russian books. And also, to me, I was very, I have an adventurer in me. I wanted to, I felt this in this life, I need to, life is an adventure. I read Exodus and I want to go to Israel, I read Roots and I became Kunta Kinte. So, books or movies even. I love movies, I love books, I love going into that magical, imaginative world. So yes, and I realized that if no matter how well I do in India, I'll never have dollars to go on that kind of an adventure. So so I applied to some university, got accepted for my MBA program. My aunt and uncle lived in Canada, so it became a little easier. Yeah, so that's how I landed up, and then I got married. So we came to Pittsburgh. So.
And Pittsburgh is where you met Art.
Yes, the day, it's so amazing, Isaac. We moved to Pittsburgh, and Sharad and I moved to this little apartment, and he was going to Carnegie Mellon. I didn't have a visa or anything. And I was just looking at the posters, like things to do or whatever. And I saw Art's poster right then. It's like, as long as I've been married or moved to US, I met the group in like second week. So
Really?
yeah, and I've ever since I'm stuck. Like things, I get stuck. Usually I'm I'm almost ADD, ADHD person. So things for me to so that just this thing about just felt so just happened for me. I felt I was moved to Pittsburgh by the universe. To just to meet Art and to come across that and to go through this process of which I never, I never imagined anything like that. I never imagined this life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny because there's this trope, and it's been, a trope for like Westerners to go to India to seek enlightenment for even since time of like Plotinus,
Yes.
from Egypt to go.
Yes.
but you came from India to the US and found like a bunch of people out in West Virginia.
Yeah. And yes, and it was just so different from my mentality, what I had known, like who'd ever put, like, your TM meditation, you can do that in your grave. Mr. Rose said that. That was just so like shock to my thinking. And doubt is sacred. You never, how can you doubt your guru, your teacher? What is his words are, you know, word of Lord, and or so really you start to, and really, who are these deities? Who are these gods? Doubting them, can you imagine? So yeah, so it was just such a different, it's like east is east and west is west and never the twain shall meet. It's very different, two very, very different mindsets.
Do you think there's something to that? Like being confronted with a very different mindset helps you to see the mindset that you have more clearly. Like for instance, like, yeah, like Art studied with Rose for so many years and then met Douglas Harding, which was a very different mindset, which then allowed him, So do you see that happening for you? Like even with Namaste, as you were saying, like it's you took it for granted, it's a part of life, but seeing it with new eyes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the biggest difference you see, Isaac, as soon as you land here, is how individualistic society here is, individuals, and how collective my Eastern upbringing was. Everything is about, uh, family, parents, your role in society, your roles. I almost, at some point, oh my God, I'm getting, this is all I'll ever be. But that's all you know. And when you come here, you realize, oh my God, I'm an individual. People ask me, what do you want? And you're not considered selfish, self-centric, and you're not labeled with those words. And even as soon as the child is born, they're treated differently here, which I don't know if it's a good thing or bad, or
Well,
too much
it
of
is. It is what it is, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very different. East and West are two very different. It's almost like a very feminine. Ultimately, if you look deeper, it's a very feminine and masculine way of thinking. Two different ways of thinking. I think West is more masculine than East.
More head, individual, and left brain maybe.
Yeah.
So did you get a chance to meet Richard Rose?
Only one time. So when I moved, he was already in nursing home. So CC once took me, So I met Mr. Rose and he was in the nursing. He was just, he had this brightest, bluest eyes, Isaac. That's all I remember about Mr. Rose. He was just so, and I felt, he has Alzheimer's, the physical brain is going, but is there something in him that can look into me, or I can, seriously, I felt that kind of, and he looked at you very intently, very deeply. That was my impression of him. But it might just be my imagination. Yeah, my projection. Yeah, but yeah, I felt that way.
So what was the rest of your journey like before you found what you are?
Yeah. So yeah, I tried. Can I just tell Sharad and Kabir, can you please guys be quiet? Yeah, thank you. So sorry. This is my family, my dog. Okay. So yeah, I did Reiki. I think 2-3 levels of Reiki at some point. I did Osho meditations. I did, what else? Just I tried to become part of Gita study group in Pittsburgh. I did Buddhist um, meditation, or the chanting thing for some time. Yeah. So yeah, whatever comes along, and you don't know what you're doing, so you you become curious, and when you do. So yeah, but it was really amazing, Isaac. Once I realized that, once I found the Monday self-inquiry group, my all my inner need or curiosity, or to go to find teachers, or even everybody would go to Douglas Harding retreat. So sorry.
I'll edit it.
Okay. So yeah. So yeah, it got. I never felt any need after that. Yeah.
So you found what you were looking for with that group.
Yeah. I didn't see it like that, but it just what I was doing it was maybe with so much intensity, I guess. Yes, that. Yeah. But there was a fear, Isaac, that am I just kidding myself, or is it, what if on my dying day I realize, oh, I should have done that, I should have gone to that retreat, or seen that teacher, or everybody in people had their favorite teachers, and still trying to find things. And so I had this fear of regret. What if I realized that I didn't try hard enough. Or yeah, so yeah.
And so that was kind of like fuel
Yes.
for finding. Yeah. I think, well, so in this book, I always read behind you, one of my favorite pieces from it was your story of the snake charmer.
Ah.
Yeah, I love
Yes.
that. And it would, but it seems like, well, would you mind sharing it if you?
Yeah, it's actually a true story, Isaac. So my 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 grandmother lived in a small town, and for the first 5 years of my life, I lived with her. My grandparents, they lived in a small house, and yeah, there were this Mani Ram, snake charmer, and he would come and show us the snakes. And one time, out of the bushes, he caught 5 snakes, different kinds, and I knew how he showed me how he took out the poisonous fangs like that, and now the snakes are not poisonous enough. So yeah, he was kind of my my grandparents' friend, kind of. He'd come once in a while, and then eventually he died of snake bite. Snake bit him. Yeah. So it was just one of the things I always remembered, that how life. Yeah.
Well, a lot of the stories in here, and the pieces of writing that, especially from you, seem to be about death. And you also share of the story of how your cousin died at a young age, and it seems to me that death is sort of that ultimate question that drives a lot of people.
Yeah.
So what do you think death is? What do you think will happen to you after you die? Do you know?
Yes. I do know. Yeah. See, who I am, who I am is beyond death. It can die. So, one day I questioned myself again, that really, I think what really is, how do I know for sure how death is going to, what death will look like. How do you know? How do I know unless and until an experience happens, right? I haven't experienced death myself yet. That's what I feel. This body hasn't, right? The body. So how am I going to react? So I had this dream, Isaac, that I'd gone to TAT. I'd gone to TAT meeting in West Virginia. The meeting got over and I'm coming back to Pittsburgh and I'm driving through the hills, right? And I used to have this CRV, and suddenly it's like dusk time and my CRV flew off the ridge, off the mountain, and I start to go down. And you know how in dreams everything happens in slow motion. So it's like, and I know, and I can see my thoughts, I'm thinking, oh, so, I'm flying off the the road and into the ditch now, and I'm going to hit. And what I'm feeling amazed is that I'm not panicking, and that's surprising. I'm not afraid, I'm not panicking, but I'm curious. Oh, then I start thinking, oh, now I'm going to face death. I'm going to see what death looks like. What, and um, so it's dark, it's getting darker, and and then I think that, I'm so curious about death. Who is this curious? And then I realized that, the one who's curious is already dead. She just gone, she is already dead. And who I am it's beyond death. Death is also part of the dream. The one who was born is dead already. So, and I never crashed. The dream got over, I don't know, at some point. But seriously, that the dream really showed me what brought clarity, kind of, I would say.
Yeah. So what do you think of things like reincarnation? Like, were you raised with that belief? And
Yeah. It doesn't get my interest, Isaac, to tell you the truth. I don't care what I was, what I'll be, what I see, every night you go to sleep, right? A new dream comes up. You see it, it goes. Oh, you know what? So what? Again, but yeah, but I think, the critter animal does get curious about, how does absolute finds its inspiration? How does it make, all this comes out of it and all this goes into it? It doesn't have any, it's like supreme intelligence. And so I get all excited to know the thought of that, how it's, and to me, the world is mirroring that supreme intelligence. You see how quickly things are changing, social media, COVID, whatever. So all that to me is all the time, constantly is that supreme intelligence manifesting itself.
Hmm.
Sorry, guys, my dog is mewing. Let's get him out.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Here we go. Okay.
So I have a question.
Yes.
What is the ego?
You should. What is not ego? You should ask that seriously. When you really start to look, that's what I found, that anything or everything that I knew is ego, is the I sense, me sense, I sense. It's the individuality. It's not just pride, and it's not just, me, myself. It's not just that. It's that core I sense. And yeah, so I realized that even the desire for enlightenment is a desire of the ego, and how do you get rid of the penny? It's like penny hiding the sun. That's the famous Pullian quote that I loved so much. So ultimately it was about how do I get myself out of the way? How to get rid of the penny? So it's like something outside of ego becomes so important to it that it's ready to sacrifice itself ultimately. So yeah, but it's all ego game. Even wanting to sacrifice yourself is the ego thought.
So how does that in the book you talk about like nuts and bolts, like what some good attitudes to help your search become successful. And one of the things you talk about is accepting the limited self, right? And I think that's very important. And how do you reconcile that, like accepting the limited self with like wanting to transcend the limited self?
Yeah. See, without, I don't think you can really progress unless and until you really accept your human self, all your desires, fears, limitations, good, bad, and ugly side of you. And believe it or not, Isaac, whatever, if it is in this, it will surface, it will come up, it will get looked at. Somehow it's just part of getting clarity, and it's not about fixing also, and you really can't fix fix it much. And another thing about self-inquiry is so amazing, or when you really look at something or something gets in your view, it has this self-correcting mechanism inbuilt. It just, things get aligned with the nature, with even not just limited self. You see your place in the, I feel this is also something that seekers do, just take it for granted, aligning yourself with nature, yeah, how you are a little clog in this big Brahman universe, and yeah, in your role in it, that too.
That's
Though
something.
that is your projection, but yes. And I think it's and just understanding your body also. I feel if I ever open a school of self-inquiry, one of the basic courses that everyone must take is you're studying your endocrine system, how your your brain works, how your glands work, and they're so important, I feel. Your physiology even, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like, well, it's also interesting compared to somebody like Richard Rose, who is very like trying to transcend nature and fight nature in a way.
No, Isaac, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he really brought, I think reading Mr. Rose or understanding, if you read his essays, he really, to me, I think he was really brilliant in making. I started studying myself as an organism after reading Mr. Rose. He said men are all roosters and women are all butterflies trying to find the best sperm for their egg, just by that mere statement, And he was very much, I felt he was very much in tune to really looking at nature, and his my favorite paper, Truth in Transmission, that little booklet. Yeah. So I don't think he undermines of course, you transcend it. How can you transcend? The only way you can transcend something is when you know it, right? You can't just deny it. You can't.
Yeah.
Or something else takes over so much of your attention that doesn't matter. That's the way too. But
Well, so this is like looking into the robot, like
right.
Looking into the programming, the desires and motivations.
Yeah. So where those desires and motivations come from, if not from it's biological age, it's your circumstances, really just looking at what is that desire trying to satisfy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard you say a lot of times, asking people like, what do you really want?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that just seems so wise to me. It's for anybody, whether or not they're like on the path towards enlightenment or they're a healer or a magician or whatever,
Yeah.
to know what you want and to like look into your motivations is the most important thing. Like if you're just doing like magical workings, for instance,
Mhm.
for things that you don't even really want, when they happen, then you're going to be stuck with that. Or when you're
Yeah.
building your life towards something that you think you want, that society has been telling you want, like a shiny car and whatever, McMansion.
Uh-huh.
Then when you get that and you've built your whole life for that, then
Uh-huh.
you don't really want it.
No, Isaac, here is the thing. No matter what path you take, be it a path of as a magician, or be it path as a healer, or be it any path, as a lover, as a musician, and if you're really your being, your spirit, something in you gets like it grows up. Ultimately, the satisfaction of being. I think all we're programmed to be better, Ultimately, we're programmed unless and until you reach that capital P perfection of being the capital M magician, something in you will not be able to stop, yeah, yeah. It'll be like, oh, I can learn that, I can learn that, I can learn that. But something you inside of you will not stop unless until you become that capital M magician, capital M musician, where all, which is the source of all, the source of all music, source of all magics, the master musician, the master magician, master healer, where all the, sickness comes from and where all the cure also comes from, right? So I don't think if you really uh, get tuned into, if you're really tuned into being, if you really truly are a magician, you know at heart, at your in your bones, whatever. Sometimes we're just doing it. That's why it's important to know what you really want, you know not pretending, you take up, oh, I want to be this, I want to be that, I want to be a teacher, a doctor, whatever, but it's just a profession, right?
Yeah. But what do you really want? And that kind of brings it to that, that fun discussion about like free will versus, I mean, fate. Like if you're following your truest desire, you're uncovering your desire, is that free will? And what is free will? Is it something you can like have or build or grow or sorry.
Free will. I, when I really started, this is one of the most important questions that get asked. What is free will, whether you make choices? So when you see the robot, the robotic way life gets lived, it just, it's free will comes. Free will comes in only after. Before that, it's just it's action and reaction. But when you become, see, I really have this theory that man is not capable of committing sin, because unless somebody is aware, where you have to be aware of good and bad. right? If somebody is just driven by, Toby cannot make wrong choices, right? So it just depends upon how awake you are. And then little bit, and I think free will only, no, human being is acting, reacting machinery, unless something, it's like, it's kind of comes through. Sometimes we do things which we weren't expecting, right?
Yeah.
Intuition, and then all that, you being used as a puppet by the
Right.
master puppeteer.
Yeah.
So yeah, all comes from there. Even my desire to have a Pepsi or a Coke is not. Yeah.
Well, it seems like that inquiry into the organism and like the drives, the desires, and the fears gives the possibility of free will potentially. If you can see how the robot is functioning, become aware of how the robot is functioning, you have the potential choice to program it differently, maybe, or to make different choices.
See, so our desires and fears are the ones that give direction to our life.
Uh-huh.
Our that's how our life, that gives direction. But when you can, man cannot, once, as I said, if it is in its purest form, the power of desire is such that it'll just ignite you. You can't rest then.
Uh-huh.
Once you get, whatever desire it is. And so it's, but are you the source? Are you the one that chose that desire, or you got chosen by the desire? I feel, so again, you can, you do whatever it takes to satisfy that that fire, that desire has caused you, or because it's uncomfortable. Desire is not, when desire gets, or fear or whatever, it's not comfortable. Then human being does, as a human being, you do whatever it takes to cure that pain, right? So is that free will? Yeah, we do have choice of, what if you're sick or if you're in pain, you do whatever it takes to take care of that pain, right?
Yeah.
But is that free will? Or is free will when I choose my desire? I'm okay, I know, it's not like I'm being chosen by the desire.
Yeah. And why do you want to choose that desire? I mean,
Yes.
that's desire too, right? But at the same time, I think that you have to act as if you have free will, or I mean, yeah, it's like you can't say that you don't have free will as much as you can't say that you do.
Yeah. No, I think, compared to Toby, I'm self-aware. I'm, I can I can make wiser choices as a human being. Though if you look at the condition of the world, you doubt that. Yeah. So free will. It's again, it's one of those words that changes its meaning for you as you look, I guess.
This kind of brings up another question that I wanted to ask you when I was reading through the nuts and bolts section of, it's basically like preparing your mind for this experience of understanding to happen. And there's one that's about glad acceptance or peace. And I took it as a way of, it's like cheerful acceptance, a way of just sort of accepting what happens in life. But something that came up for me was How do you know when something that life is being thrown at you, something that life throws at you is actually just like an abusive situation or something, and you feel like, oh, I'm just cheerfully accepting this, but really what you need is to get out of a toxic job or a toxic relationship, you know? So how do you recognize when there needs to be action taken versus when you need to change your attitude and just peacefully accept life?
So, AC, first of all, I don't believe that if somebody is stepping on your foot, you don't push them away.
Okay, next. Yeah.
so, so you know, somebody's gonna just prick you or just being a jerk around you. Obviously, yeah, you're gonna react, right?
Yeah.
Unless you start to see that, oh, I'm going to be so compassionate and loving and kind that, you know, that's not how you live life. Do you? So glad acceptance is, to me, is the glad acceptance that, yes, I'm a human being and I'm going to react and I'm going to have a toothache and I'm going to whine and crib. And if my spouse is being, you know, whatever, I'm going to do whatever it takes, you know, that's glad acceptance.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Oh, I should be this, I should be so good, I should be a kind mother, and and glad acceptance is also, I'm not as good a parent, but I'm trying my level best. What else can you do? You know, yeah, you know, reading books about whatever, you know, the parenting or just stuff, how your brain works, how you're, you know, yeah. So you live your life in total acceptance then. Good, bad, and ugly.
There you go. Okay, that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
Yeah.
So glad I asked.
Uh-huh. But there is, you know, there are times where even resignation, you know, just like, oh my God, this is so awful.
Mhm.
Like grief, for example, you know, it's
Mhm.
painful. You, but that's glad acceptance of that pain. You know, yes, I
Yeah.
can't help it. I can't short circuit it. I just have to live with it. And, you know,
Right. Because the more you resist, the more it
uh-huh.
persists. And so it's, you know, accepting that that is your path, that grief is your current journey rather than resisting is going to help you move through it. It's kind of like a bad
Yeah.
trip.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my understanding of the word.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Another thing that I had that I wanted to ask, another question I had was about obstacles that you've seen in other seekers over the years, because you've been involved working one-on-one with people and in small groups, and you've seen a lot of spiritual seekers, you know, in various situations. But yeah, what do you see as some of the most common obstacles that people deal with? And yeah, how do you overcome them?
You know, I just get dumbstruck and I just don't know what else to say when people get to that point. Oh, there's nothing to be done.
Oh yeah, there's nothing to be done. There's no doer.
Nothing. Yes, there's no need. There's nothing to be done. And, you know, everything is good and whatever. So, and see, to me, it's like this, Isaac. We, you know, as we are in a movie theater, right? As a, you can be the one audience, you are the character in the movie, the screen behind it, there's a projector room, someone who's directing, right? And then at some point people get to that point of, as human beings, again, it's relative. See, you become aware of the blank screen, you realize that things, you know, the characters, and yet the you see that everything is happening on the screen, and these are just, people get that view, you know. That's as human beings, it's our, we have that in us to be able to see that, you know. And yet then people become so this thing that, oh, they feel, once they see it, I think there's a relief, kind of such a big relief that they're, you know, they've seen this, that They think they've found. Maybe, each one of us is looking for different things. Who needs? Who can tell that this is not it or whatever? I feel if you think that this is what you found it, okay, then good for you. However, I feel that, just keep, if this satisfies you, good, good for you. But in my mind, I feel that it's not the capitalist satisfaction yet. The personal, it's like finding realizing the big mind, but you're still, there are, the small mind has not not got lost yet, not broken its boundaries yet. There are still boundaries around the small, around this, there's still boundaries here.
So I think part of that, though, is what we were just talking about with free will. Is like, from a certain perspective, there's nothing to be done.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you just say there's nothing to be done and then don't do anything, and you just get stuck in the same place.
Yeah.
But it's difficult. It's tricky, and it's easy. It seems easy to want to be done.
See, no, Isaac, this is another thing which I really appreciate learning from the group, from Mr. Rose, is self-honesty.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's what keeps you on track. Just being honest with your own self. And this is not a path about anybody else. You can't take someone with you. You can share it. I don't believe in transmission and somebody else can do it for you or stop your head or whatever. And I feel, maybe it's just me, that unless and until the seeker has made that effort and done it by themselves, somehow it's that, it's the game. It's a hide and seek. You found it, you found yourself.
Right.
So yeah.
No one else can walk the valley for you.
Yeah. No one else can taste the sugar for you.
Yeah. And that comes to this concept you talk about, mental hygiene. Being self-honest with yourself is a way of keeping your mind clean and on task. Yeah, I think that's really crucial.
Yeah. What other ways do you keep your mind fresh and clean?
The only way your mind can stay clean and hygienic is if you don't live in society, you live somewhere far away in the mountains. But if you're in the world, if you're interacting with other humans who are as annoying or as insane as you are, then it's hard to keep it,
Then good luck.
I see.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Arma, I think this has been a really amazing conversation, and I've had a lot of great time. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners before we move on?
No, not really. Just, good luck. It's possible. Of course, each and every one, that's the beauty of it. Each and every one has the potential. It's just, and it's not hard. It's not difficult. It's not complicated. It's all about attention, just bringing your attention to it and keeping your head on it, So yeah, and in whichever direction, have you noticed, like, YouTube is so amazing. Whatever you put in the word, and suddenly there's the whole universe that opens up for you, which you had no idea about, no matter what it is. It's just the same thing. It's I think the world the universe is so much aligned with the So whichever direction your awareness turns, it starts lighting up there, if you're looking, whatever you look at. So yeah, it's possible. And it's, if you really want it, it's all about turning your attention towards it. It's as easy, as simple as that.
Yeah.
Mm.
I see. I know some spiritual practitioners or teachers who don't want to talk about their spiritual experiences because they think that it can give people like unrealistic expectations or transfer like guru worship onto them or stuff like that. And I understand that perspective too. But I also do see why some, like, knowing that it's possible, knowing that it's possible, it gives you sometimes that energy to keep going, or like a guiding star to
and Isaac, you'll be amazed. It's like you get you see milestones. Once you start, it's like magic starts to happen in your seriously. So that keeps you, but you shouldn't. What happens is we get stuck with it. We start to think, oh my God, this is it. Just keep your, if you keep your eyes on the highest peak, the highest peak, then all these things happen. You enjoy the ride, but your eyes will remain there, right?
Yeah.
And things, and your path will become more straight versus going haywire. Going on tangents. Though you get curious, you're a human being. What to do?
Yeah.
You'd get,
Right.
yeah, but that's okay too. But I think if you keep the highest, the bestest goal, or however you see it, in mind, it becomes easier.
Yeah.
And
Your
it
highest
becomes
ideal.
magical.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything will align itself to help you.
Yeah. And something that you said in your book, that you were inspired by something Art said to you, that it was you just got to follow a feeling. And so often when we think about enlightenment experiences, we think about our head and it's like all about our mind, but feelings, I feel like, are so associated with the heart. And I don't know, I wonder if it's like more than just a mind experience, if it's like a whole spirit experience, whole body experience, an emotional experience, like
it's a you see, that's the problem between a male and a female state of mind. Women get too stuck with their feelings and heart, but can you really, if you really look, can you really trust that it changes? My feelings,
oh yeah.
it's so hormone driven, and it just changes so quickly unless and until you find a way of keeping it present. You'll be less inspired some days, you'll be more inspired in other days. Some days
Right.
you'll lose all interest, you want to throw it out of the window. You've done too much.
Yeah.
Some days they'll be like, oh my God, how did it, I need to do so, there's more fire in you. So that's so I didn't trust my feelings as much. Though being a woman, you can't avoid it. But use your, it's self-inquiry is a double-edged sword, and you have to use both sides. Your intellect also. Make what does make common sense. Ask yourself that why do I want to depend on my feelings and my heart so much? I do have a brain, perfectly better brain probably than a man's brain. And I do feel, AC, that as women, nature has programmed us such that we tend to forget too quickly. But once you make up your mind, once a woman makes up her mind, the path is much, much shorter, because surrender and acceptance to us come so much more naturally. Whereas a man is a warrior, he has to fight. The surrender and so yeah, I think that's the difference between the two. However, you can't, every man is also a woman and every woman is also a little bit of a man. So you have to find the you can't be identified with this or that. The point is about losing your identity, right? So,
Totally.
yeah.
And it's also, easy to get stuck in the mind,
Yeah.
concepts and conceptual
Mm.
frameworks and
Mm,
circles
that
of
too.
thought.
Mm,
We got to
yeah.
balance them.
Mhm.
Yeah. So mind gets confronted, when you see something that's beyond the realm of the mind. Mind only has so much of imagination, so it gets questioned. Uh,
Yeah.
That it's not the boss, it doesn't know everything, it can't really understand. You cannot understand your way also to truth,
Mhm.
though understanding is required, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to try
Uh,
seems to me you gotta try to understand as much as you can, and
yeah.
use the tools
Mhm,
that you have access to, that you have
mhm.
to use.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the word understanding brings clarity.
Mm.
It brings clarity. So when people say, oh, I've stopped reading books now, I've stopped doing this, I've stopped doing that, seriously, unless until you found it, you you need, how can you stop? Have you found it? Yeah. So yeah.
Hmm.
But
Well,
then your own intention, you have to see that with what intent am I trying to increase something, am I really, or am I trying to find clarity, am I trying to find an answer to my question, why am I doing what I'm doing? This is again one of those Mr. Rose's gift.
yeah.
You're looking at your motives and your intent
Yeah.
behind your actions and reactions.
Well, that's why clarity is so important, because how do you tell?
Yeah,
You know?
true. And to have clarity, Isaac, the human mind lives in duality. So you have to see both sides. And that's the only way you get clarity. Otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that's another good reason for group work.
yeah,
Other people point out things you can't see.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
yes, definitely. All right, guys.
Well, thank
Well,
you
yeah.
so much. It was really, really nice talking with you. And thanks
Yes,
for taking the time to be on our podcast.
absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
See you night. Bye.